Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
President Trump has done something historic. Let's recognize that, regardless of partisan and politics of that kind. As a matter of national security, let's recognize what President Trump has done.
That this is the very moment they've been waiting for 47 years. We're shown photos of the people that were allegedly killed by the regime. There were people here holding those photos and saying that this day is for them. President Trump being thanked by name here in this crowd. But some people are even Democratic voters who are praising the president.
Trump is not just saving America. President Trump is saving the world. The people of Iran are so grateful that President Trump is finally the one who helped us out. After the Clintons, the Bushes, the Obamas, the Bidens, nobody even cared for the Iranian people as much as President Trump.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yep, that was propaganda unabashedly. I let the closing screen stay up there on purpose because I want people to know how Iranians, those were Iranians, across the spectrum feel about what's going on. So good afternoon and welcome to Truth Thursday on the Rob Maness Show. And that's a little truth. Elections, diplomacy, and peace. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast, and today we are covering several developing stories with national and international implications. We're going to start with recent expressions of gratitude, like you just saw, towards President Trump from the Iranians around the world who see his policies as a turning point after decades of tyrannical Islamic regime oppression. They're Nazis, just as bad as Nazi Germany, people. This is in the context of ongoing operations that we are really glad to see. These operations are against Iran's missile and naval capabilities. Those are the objectives, as expressed by the Secretary of War. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, came online. Same exact message. And he's addressed the status of U.S. actions against Iran, stating the mission to neutralize short-range ballistic missiles and naval threats. That's what it is, including risks to shipping in the Straits of Hormuz, is proceeding on or ahead of schedule. Following years of buildup, not just years, decades of buildup under prior U.S. administrations. On the economic side, Treasury actions under Scott Bessent are under maximum pressure sanctions on Iran. They've significantly impacted Iran, but there are some economic implications to the operation that we want to talk about with our guest today. But Iran's funding sources are being slammed, and amongst other things that are happening to her allies like China. U.S. energy dominance and domestic economic positioning is going very, very well. Finally, the first 2026 midterm primaries took place this week in Texas and North Carolina. In Texas, Proposition 10, banning Sharia law, received over 95% of voter support, while the Republican Senate primary heads to a May runoff between incumbent Senator John Cornyn and Attorney General Ken Paxton. And State Rep James Tallarico won the Democratic nomination against, you know her, Jasmine Crockett. Yes, the wacko had to be beaten by a state representative. And in North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper secured the Democrat nominee, and former GOP Chairman Michael Whatley, endorsed by President Trump, of course, secured the GOP nominee handily. Well, to break all this down, elections, Iran developments, NATO burden sharing, peace prospects, and the economy, we're joined again by veteran TV news producer and Substack host at The Analyst, and host of a news show on WABC Radio, Jake Novak. Jake, welcome back. And the name of your show is News Hour Weekend Edition, right?
That's right. That's right. Thanks for having me. It's coming fast and furious, but this is what we live for. To not only live and see these kinds of amazing things happening, but being able to have. So it's so great. People like us can actually explain it to the American people and not give that monopoly anymore to the mainstream media because they don't know what they're talking about. They just don't.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for having me on your shows, and you had me on the Stone Zone last night. You were standing in for our friend Roger Stone on WABC Radio. I want to thank you for letting me come on and talk about the technical details of an air campaign, a naval campaign, the strategy, and the methodology behind it. Because I don't. Obviously, from some of the stuff you see on social media, most folks don't really understand that, so I appreciate that. And I wanted to get you on today to talk about the diplomatic, political, and economic pieces to go along with the technical military type stuff that's going on with this operation. I want to start there. So those pictures in that video, the reason I showed the video wasn't because it was from the White House. It was because I'm pretty sure those were from around the world. So Iranians in exile and Iranians in the streets inside Iran, I believe, are represented in those pictures. And it doesn't matter amongst the Iranians where they're at on the spectrum. They could be Shah backers, the MEK, or Kurds. I think they're all on the same page that the United States is and Israel are right now, aren't they? From a political perspective, am I correct in that?
Yeah, this is not like Iraq, which, sure, I mean, I guess that by the time the Iraq War started, the Second Persian Gulf War, most Iraqis did want to see Saddam Hussein overthrown, but it was a close one. It was a balkanized country, to say the least. Iran does have different ethnicities going on in there. It's not like a completely uniform culture and ethnicity thing going on, but they are much more unified in the desire to overthrow this regime, and the chances of there being long-term terrorist anti-American cells existing in Iran once, let's say, American civilians start going there and maybe some Persian Americans return, I think that's very low. We're not going to see that. I'm not saying there won't be any incidents, but the idea that there's a significant segments of the population that aren't going to be happy at these developments, I don't think you're going to see that, Colonel. That's certainly for true. And that's why you see so many Persians around the world celebrating this, because they've long wanted to return to their homes. Some of them were separated from families. I went to junior high with the boy who got out with his mother and his brothers, but he never saw his father again. His father didn't get out. So I know what that's like. I really do, out of Iran, I mean.
Yeah, the folks that I have been talking to for several years now that are part of the groups that are the NCRI, I met the first person. He's a young guy, not young anymore, but he's middle-aged now at this point. But his dad was one of the people executed by the mullahs I think they executed over 20,000 people in one whack early on, and his dad was one of those people, and that's why he's part of this effort, even though he's never even lived inside the country. He's dedicated to this effort to turn it into some kind of democracy that everybody inside the country can, and those that want to go back to it, can agree on. And I think that's the way things have to happen, right? I mean, there's no way the United States, and folks, there's no evidence whatsoever that even one tank tread or one boot has moved towards even getting on ships that would be needed in the numbers to take them overseas to do a ground invasion here. I mean, think about it. In Desert Storm, we spent 6 months during Desert Shield building up over 170,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marine ground troops. That's just the ground troops, not counting the armor and all the aviation stuff and everything. So I think we had over 500,000 people over there. We haven't come even close to that. And that's because we know that it's got to come from the people on the ground inside, right?
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting developments of the last 24 hours is there's growing video and other evidence telling us that the remaining regime killers in Iran are using mosques and schools not only as bases but as shooting points, as vantage points for sniper attacks on the civilians. And that just goes to show that this is something that they know. Once the civilians go out into the streets, That's it. They're not expecting American troops or large foreign infantry into their country. They're hoping for not seeing the large amount of people in Iran who know how to do it. They were just doing it in massive protests just a couple of months ago, but they need to feel safe. And I think that this is a signal to the U.S. and the Israelis. Absolutely, do not take mosques and schools off your list of targets, especially maybe in the wee hours of the night when people aren't going to be in those places anyway, other than the bad guys. And maybe the Iranian people probably have been told, hey, don't go to mosques and schools for the next few days, at least, because that's where the bad guys are hiding out. We don't want to kill you. We need to get those targets on the list, Colonel.
Yeah, and for the folks that don't understand the laws of armed conflict, if you use a building that is designated a mosque, is on a prohibited target list, or a school or a hospital, all of those are what are considered prohibited targets under the laws of armed conflict that we follow really religiously. We do, and so do the Israeli forces. But when they start being used for military purposes, those facilities become legitimate military targets.
It's a double war crime.
It's a double war crime. We will strike them, and the people doing it are committing war crimes. That's exactly right. And they're doing it in public. I've looked at a couple of snapshots that I've seen and seen the metadata, and the metadata confirmed what the pictures were showing. So they are actually doing it. And I'm not surprised, are you? I mean, Hamas does it. The Hezbollah guys do it. That's why the Israeli armed forces are always getting blamed for attacking churches, schools, and hospitals, because they're using them as military facilities and they're legitimate targets. So that's the way that works.
Authority does that. Yeah, even the Palestinian Authority does that. You know, in some of the churches, the holiest churches for Christendom in Israel, like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and that has been used as a weapons cache for Palestinian Authority terrorists for a long time. Not Hamas. It's been used by all kinds of, and that's why there are so few Palestinian Christians left in the West Bank. There's none left in Gaza because they've used their churches in addition to their own mosques as weapons caches, and that is a double war crime. If you use a mosque or a hospital or a school as a place to hide out as a militant, that's a war crime. And if you use those places to fire on civilian targets, that's a double war crime, and that has been the MO of Hamas for a long time. Their sponsors in Iran now doing it too.
Oh, yeah. Well, they're the ones that trained them how to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, it's just going back to its roots. So they're despicable. They're despicable people. They do not deserve to be treated as legitimate combatants. I consider them war criminals, and we should treat them the way we did Nazi Germany, and systematically destroy their stuff and themselves and their units until they walk out and unconditionally surrender. You know, politically, another good sign, I keep telling folks, and I mentioned this last night, that one of the good signs of effectiveness of this operation is the crushing defeat of their command and control and communication system. And I saw just before I came on that the president, I think it's the president of Azerbaijan, posted something because they got attacked by the Iranians right after he had agreed on their behalf to get their people evacuated out of Lebanon, and wasn't even going to charge them. There is a major set of shifting going on politically in the Middle East right now, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of countries in the Middle East and all over the world have tried to play a little bit of a dance with Iran for a long time. They kind of know they're not good, but maybe they can get something out of it. Listen, France does that, and they've been doing that for years. So why wouldn't another Muslim country try to do that? You get what they're trying to do, and they're realizing now that has come to an end. I mean, we can sort of play the game of, well, they should never have gotten involved with them in the first place, but that's backward looking. We know that sadly they made the wrong decision back then. So it's just more important to just say that kind of relationship is now impossible. They won't be able to continue to do this now that there are there's physical evidence and people dead in these countries. So it's over. We can say that, and that to me is more dramatic than saying, well, you shouldn't have done that. I mean, you know, we'll do the I told you so's later. We've been doing them for 47 years. I don't really need to do it again. I'd rather make it clear that this relationship now is over. You cannot continue with this. You probably get it more than I do now, but I'm telling you again, and I'm telling the rest of the world, stop with this dance. The party's over.
Yeah, absolutely. We got to take a break, Jake. When we come back, I got a little clip from Secretary Rubio. This guy really gets it, folks. And I have not always been a big fan of Senator Rubio, but this Secretary of State is really stepped up performance a notch and is America first right now. We'll be right back with Jake Novak.
Yes.
Yesterday, you told us that Israel was going to strike Iran, and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get.
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked.
Okay. No, were you the one that? Because somebody asked me a question yesterday. Did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you asked me that. That follow up, and I said no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program, that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday, and you guys need to play it. If you're going to play these statements, you need to play the whole statement, not clip it to reach a narrative that you want to do, all right?
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. There's a little truth being delivered by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and he's addressing the little snippers out there, the snipers, the verbal snipers and everything that are going, you're just doing this because of Israel. They wanted you to do it. I mean, it spans the spectrum, the silliness coming out of people's brains. And some of these people are people that I know, and they're thinking people, but they've been lost in a narrative of propaganda that's been used against them. And I'm telling you, behind it is Iranians, Chinese, probably some Russians, probably some Venezuelans, some Cubans. That entire propaganda set and that narrative is being used against you, folks. This president makes his own decisions. And my guest today is Jake Novak, host of the new news show on the weekend there at WABC Radio in New York City. And of course, a good friend of our show, and I'm making him a regular here as long as I can get away with it because I enjoy having him on, and he's one of the best analysts I've ever met. Jake, that's just the tip of the iceberg from the diplomatic and political change, that's the shifting of the earth under people's feet. It's happening to even you and I. We have to really be guarding against that and look very carefully at what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and the conclusions we're coming to about that, because the earth is literally shifting under U.S. diplomacy and foreign policy, and I think for the better.
I think so, too. Iran has been behind so much of our problems, not just with terrorism. They are the number one sponsors of terrorism all over the world. But our news media, some of these talking points, some of this crazy cockamamie stuff is because of Iranian money going through Qatar and the bullet points. I used to get them when I was at CNN. I used to get that bullet point email every day from CARE telling everyone what to say. And some of those bullet points are actually followed. Qatar couldn't have done that without trying to play some game with Iran. And what we were just talking about before the break. I mean, if Qatar doesn't wake up to the fact now that they can no longer do this little dance with Iran and the United States at the same time, I don't know what's going to wake them up. I would assume that they realize it's over now. And again, I tell you what, I'll make them a deal. I won't say I told you so anymore if you just stop the relationship now, which you really need to do. But, you know, this is something I want to. Sometimes people say, you know, oh, Jake, you're Jewish. You did some work for a brief time at the Israeli consulate. You just must be all crazy about Israel all the time, and you don't want to hear any criticism. That's not true. I could do many shows on critiquing what's going on in Israeli society, starting with the education system, which disappoints me. Mm-hmm. But what I want to say is this. It is legitimate to say the following. Hey, Israel's our friend, but they got some sick, bad enemies out there. And if we sit with Israel, we need to figure out how far and how much of exposure to the United States that's going to cost us, and whether they win. If we take the pros and the cons, whether remaining friends with Israel outweighs that. In addition to the fact that there's a morality issue here, do we give in to the bullies who hate Israel and are Islamo-fascists, even though it may cost us a little or not? That's a fair argument to have, and maybe you need to say sometimes we need to step back and not be on the line with them with every little thing they do. To me, that's a very legitimate argument. I'd be willing to have it. But what so many people are trying to do now is create false narratives that Israel told Trump, we got to do this, as if there hadn't been a 47-year war on America by Iran. You know, and as if this hadn't been something that had been. You said you war gamed this back when you were a captain. You know, I don't want to give away your age, but that wasn't yesterday, Colonel. So, you know, I mean, come on. True. This is so silly. This is so silly. This is not what's going. Iran has been a mortal enemy of the United States even before they did anything to Israel. They did stuff to the United States. Okay, so let's just stop this nonsense. If you want to say that this wasn't a good gamble to make, that's fair to say. But you know, please stay within the realm of reality, please.
That's why I keep bringing up the ground force movement and the numbers you would be needing to see of not just people but armor, tanks, armored personnel carriers. I mean, it's massive what would happen. What would need to happen. Think about the Desert Shield operation to deploy those forces in. That was just to take Kuwait. Iran is huge with terrain from sea level, deserts to high mountainous terrain. And the target set is tremendously large. It would take many, many more people than the 500,000 that we deployed for Desert Storm to take that country. It's just not happening. The facts don't support those arguments. They also don't support the arguments that Israel's telling this president of the United States what to do. It's ridiculous on its face. And of course, I am not happy with the way the Israeli Defense Forces weren't ready for October 7th. I've never heard any really good answers to that. And I think the government of Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to get on the ball because we're their allies, and their lack of readiness has a lot to do with how bad it tended to be. I mean, you may not have been able to stop the attack, but you surely, the folks over there surely many more would have survived had readiness been where it needed to be. And, so I've criticized the government of Israel many times from those types of perspectives. So when we see our Secretary of State who's engaging like that, and now the alliance with Israel, that's solid, that's obvious. We're in an allied effort. But now the Gulf Arab states like Turkey have been struck by the Iranians. All of those areas have been struck. Even Cyprus, I think, took a round the other day. And Qatar's been struck outside of the big military air base at Al Udeid. That was struck, but they've had targets on their military and their civilians been hit too. So now it's more than just an Israel and American allied operation, because a lot of these countries are weighing in and saying, hey, you are not going to go unpunished for this. How do you see that changing the ground from a diplomatic and a political perspective for the future? Does it give us hope for the future? Should we be wary of this shift? Because it's kind of like they've always been there for us, but they've always played that game, like you mentioned before. How is that going to change for the better, if it's possible, now that they're openly confronting the Iranians?
Well, I think it gives us clarity. You know, for 1,400 years or so, it was pretty easy to figure out what side you wanted to be on in the Muslim world. The Sunnis or the Shia. They've been having a civil war since Muhammad died about 1,400 years or so ago, give or take a few decades.
Yeah.
And what was going on for the last 30 years is a strange, strange development where the Shiites in Iran started to cultivate Sunnis, whether it was Hamas, whether it was people in Qatar, whether it was some other people, some other countries like that, even the Turks, to try to get them on their side, even though they were on opposite sides of this long civil war. And it seemed like some Sunni groups were willing to cross over and, if not completely start to support the Shia side in that civil war, at least say, well, we'll work with them for a while, and maybe we'll be able to extricate ourselves later. And it made things difficult to figure out on whose side. I mean, I still don't know if ISIS had anything to do with Iran. It's hard to tell, by the way. ISIS is a Sunni movement. So it created 30 years worth of an increasing amount of fogginess. Whose side is everyone on? We can't just do Sunni Shia anymore. This isn't like Russia and China, Soviet Union and China in 1972. I can't. It's hard to keep. I need a scorecard. So we're going to get some clarity now. I think this will get everyone back to their traditional Sunni and Shia corners of the ring. And we're going to be able to tell everyone, we'll be able to deal with the Sunnis in one way and the Iranians in another. Before Barack Obama became president, there was still a hope. I remember I sat in a private session with Charles Krauthammer in 2006 or 7, where he said that the next president who gets elected in 2008 needs to treat the Iranians and the rest of the Sunni, and then the Sunni world, like President Nixon did, setting off China and Soviet Union against each other and finding a third sort of wedge there. I think we can go back to that now. But the thing is, without Iran being a major player, I really don't think that believe it or not, the Muslim world and the Arab region and the Middle East in general, the Iranians are not Arabs, I really don't think that's going to be even a player anymore. I think we'll be able to pivot to China now and look at more at them as a major threat, and they are the biggest power against us right now, and work with and decide how that's going to work, because Iran was just clouding everything, Colonel. And I think that the clouds are going to get cleared away, and we'll have some clarity now.
Do you think that look, there's the Iranian people and Israelis for thousands of years have had a special friendship, right? I don't think a lot of people understand that. Do you think? I know they're a majority Muslim country, I believe, on the Shiite side. But do you think the Persian face of the Iranian people will show more, especially in the relationship with the state of Israel?
You know, the Islamic ethnicity of the Iranian people has also been a little bit murky. There was a mass forced conversion incident in Iran in the middle of the 19th century. And there's a lot of Iranian Muslims who quietly remembered in their family, secretly said, you know, we're really Jewish, we're really Zoroastrian. And they kept that. And by the way, the same thing happened in Europe with the Inquisition. Many generations of Jews living in secret in places like Spain and Portugal and places like that, even in Italy. So that's actually good news. It's good news because you don't have, this is not an entrenched Islamic culture for a millennium or more. It's not. They don't really have, they have a lot of other ethnicities going on in there. But unlike Iraq, it isn't balkanized where they're literally all killing each other and looking for dominance in et cetera, et cetera. So I think that we're in an interesting situation where, yes, we can. This is a group of people we can. I mean, by the way, I even think that radical, or not radical, but entrenched Islamic, generational Islamic countries can also come to terms with non-Muslims. It's really only the Muslim Brotherhood, which gained traction at the end of the 19th century, that promoted this genocidal policy against all non-Muslims. Yes, they wanted to subjugate us, but they weren't sending us off to death until the Muslim Brotherhood took hold. So honestly, I'm much more optimistic about that. If you go to Dubai now as an Israeli or as an overt Jew, they love you. They treat you, and it's not phony. It's not fake. And by the way, the more traditional you are, the more they like you, because there's so many similarities in daily religious practice. So I'm optimistic about that. I really am, with a very, very practical understanding that there's still going to be a lot of people out there who are going to want to kill us. And by that I mean Americans and Israelis. But you know, I really think this is not like going into Yemen or going into some of these parts of Iraq. This is a much better situation.
Yeah. I want to talk in the next segment about the Abraham Accords and the economics of this whole situation, and maybe get you to talk a little bit about the Wahhabi sect inside Saudi Arabia and the challenges that they've had over the years, and maybe this can address some of that. We got to take a break, Jake. We'll be right back, and we'll take the question from the audience in the next segment. We'll be right back with Jake Novak on the Rob Maness Show.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
Last March, President Trump gave the order for Treasury to exert a maximum pressure campaign on Iran. I said at a speech at the Economic Club of New York in March that I predicted that the Iranian currency would collapse, that we would see the economy collapse thanks to this maximum pressure. So we have been softening up the economy and preparing the ground for what our great warriors are doing right now. So the Iranian economy was vulnerable. We cut off the dollar supply into Iran. All of their oil is sanctioned. We've been able to keep the funds, many of the funds out of Iran. One of the largest banks collapsed in December. The central bank was forced to print a huge amount of money. Inflation ensued, and people took to the streets. So there was an economic crash in Iran in December, and now we have the opening to go in, and our military is taking over from the sky and from the sea.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. The economic concerns about the war with Iran and what the United States and Israel and our Arab allies in the region now are in a combined operation to remove the Iranian regime and reinstate it as whatever sort of democracy their people want to set up. So that they can become free again. And we are removing systematically their ballistic missile capability, their drone capability, their naval capability. I think most of their ships, except for maybe one or two, are at the bottom of an ocean, one way or the other. The first U.S. submarine attack with a torpedo on an Iranian ship occurred in the last 36 hours successfully and sunk a ship that was off Sri Lanka, only 1,100 miles from where? Diego Garcia. But the economic consequences have a lot of concern, and there's a lot going on. And my guest is Jake Novak out of New York's WABC Radio. He's got a new weekend news show. You got to go check it out there. And he is a regular on the Rob Maness Show, and for good reason, because of his analyst capability and everything he knows and all of his contacts. Jake, let's talk about the economy piece of this, but let me take a question from the audience real quick before we get too far into this. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Matt, sir.
Hey, so Jake, I'm kind of interested to know, because it actually goes back to the previous two segments. When the attack on, not the attack, but when the strike on the U.S.-Israeli strike happened on Iran, you had all these Arab countries come out and say in support of it. Now, is that because they had to, or did they want to come out against Iran the whole time and couldn't do it because it would be politically damaging to them? And is that therefore a paradigm shift that we're watching in the Middle East because of this strike?
Only because the covers have been taken off, the veil has been removed. They've been lobbying for it. The Washington Post, in a rare good piece by them on Saturday or Sunday it was, with multiple sourcing, something they don't do when they report on President Trump, multiple sourcing, said that Mohammed bin Salman, the effective leader of Saudi Arabia, has been the crown prince for more than 10 years now, was repeatedly lobbying over the last month with several phone calls to President Trump, begging him to carry out this attack. For two reasons. Saudi Arabia is existentially threatened by Iran because that's the main event. Iran, that's the main event in the Sunni Shia civil war I was just talking about. The Shia are very, very infuriated for more than a millennium that the holy sites of Islam, Mecca and Medina, are in Sunni hands in Saudi Arabia. They would like to take over that. That's an overt threat for many, many years. Second of all, the Saudis are liking this $81 a barrel oil, even if it only lasts a couple more weeks. That can help the Saudis quite a bit. And they knew that oil prices would go up if this attack went on. I'm not saying that's why primarily they wanted this, but it's been a gift to Saudi Arabia in a big way. And again, compared to where we were under Biden, we are really low on oil prices. We were in the 120s during a lot of the Biden presidency, which is 50% higher than where we are right now, and a third lower from where, you know your math. So that's how that works. But these countries for a long time have figured that the best defense against Iran is to pretend that they're sometimes their friend, and Qatar being the biggest example of that. Even Saudi Arabia sometimes says nice things about Iran, or at least did. And like I said, this should now give us the clarity. That duplicity should be over with now. We should have complete clarity from these countries that have long thought that they don't like Iran, that they're afraid of them, that they had to say nice things about it sometimes in the hopes of that being some form of defense. They should no longer have to do that anymore. They've always wanted this regime to fall. Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a huge strategic error for Iran to put those last stand orders and those particular targets that they've been shooting at in place. I mean, they're even having to call some of these folks and say, "Hey, that wasn't us." Yeah, but it really is, you guys. So let's talk about oil and the Straits of Hormuz, and let's talk about ships and insurance and China and Russia. From an economic perspective, and we'll dive into some domestic stuff in the next segment when we're talking about the elections. But let's talk about that. Iran's folks say they are closing the Straits of Hormuz, but then there's conflicting reports because a deputy commander of something came out just a little bit ago on the Iranian side and said, "No, we have not closed the Straits of Hormuz. We apply international law, and that's how we operate, etc." Although in northern Persian Gulf, they just sent an unmanned suicide boat after an oil tanker, I think it was, or some kind of merchant ship, and it's on fire up there. But in the Straits of Hormuz, they backed off of this. Is that because of their buddy China getting about 18% or so of its oil from Iran?
Yeah, China earlier today, by the way, suspended all of its, told all of its oil refineries no more exports. They need to keep everything that they're refining in country. And when they export, that means they're exporting to some of their close allies, the North Korea and stuff like. They don't want to. So sound familiar? This is kind of like the Venezuela-Cuba situation, right? So yeah, China doesn't want to see this go on much longer, and that's very helpful for the United States right now to get this thing over with quicker. And they certainly don't want to see a major spike in oil prices right now. We've had it. We've had the spike. We were at $59 a barrel. I believe it was the end of January. So, from 59 to 81 is a significant jump, but it's not, again, it's still way down from where we were just 3 years ago. In fact, the day before the October 7th attacks, October 6th, 2023, we were at $90 a barrel oil, which is still 10% higher than where we are right now. So just keep that in perspective. But yeah, this has a lot to do with that. China is losing, if Iran is falling the way we think it is, China's losing one of their bullies, but not someone that they care about. The idea that the Chinese are going to come help you. And by the way, hopefully that's another big lesson, Colonel, of all of this. If all the client states of China right now are watching, and they should be, well, here's what you can expect if you ever get attacked by the United States or Israel or a country like that. You're expecting China to back you up. Don't, because they won't. They don't care about you. They really don't. Yeah. You're just a bully. You're human cannon fodder, just like Hamas was using civilians, the same thing. And they don't care about you. And I think that that's a really good lesson. Everyone should look at this, think that China's going to save Iran's skin. Think again.
Yeah, I agree. Now, one of the biggest stories that nobody's covering, and I'm going to cover it, I think you might have covered it a little bit already too, is the ship war risk insurance issue that's going on. In the past, the Iranians have said, we're closing the Straits of Hormuz down, and then they hit a ship or two with something, and the war risk insurance prices go through the roof, and it slows traffic down. Well, this time, Lloyd's of London, crappy British friends that they are, withdrew the war risk insurance, and the President of the United States made a a precedent setting and a historical decision that he announced, and he is directing us to essentially shore up the war risk insurance for shipping in the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz. That's an unusual move, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And that's what I think. Listen, we can use some of the obvious responses to this, which I don't think are useless. I think it's good to mention. You've got a president who has a business experience and understands that you shouldn't, that business is going to get disrupted, and he understands that frustration, and he wants to make sure that that is stopped. And so he's trying to he understands that, and that's important. I don't think that you would have had that even from other Republican presidents. The Bush president, both Bush Senior and Junior, they certainly understood the oil business. But beyond that, I don't think that they were very business savvy. They really weren't. Had they been, they would have done more than just blanket tax cuts. We have a lot of 4D chess kind of economic policies coming out of this administration that are clearly the work or the inspired by someone who played a lot of games with financing and debt and things like that to get what he wants, and knowing that it isn't just a straight transaction all the time. But yes, to me, this is unprecedented that we would have this kind of, they really want this to be as clean a war as possible. I'm sure you heard a lot of when you were in the military, you probably heard a lot of cliches. There's no such thing as a clear war, son. And that's all true. And we've had casualties, so it hasn't been a pristine thing. I get that. But I think that there's a real attempt here by the Trump administration and our military to make this as clean as possible. During Desert Storm, the focus was on getting some kind of political consensus around it. And the Bush administration, at least at first, was very successful with that. They really got most of the American people and even the Democrats to support it. But had they only used that effort and focused on a clean operation of the actual war, that would have been a better use of their time. I'd much rather have the Democrats screaming and certain enemies of America screaming about this, and we have fewer casualties and the war has clearer objectives and we get out of there quicker than having the political support. I'm sure you agree.
Oh, absolutely. Look, they were so good at that. We fought alongside Syrian soldiers in the ground offensive. I mean, that's pretty incredible. If you don't know anything about it, and most of you people that were born too late don't know anything about it other than what you've seen on social media, go study that. It was a pretty good operation, diplomatically, militarily, and I think Bush, for one, he made the right decision to stop at Kuwait and restore that as a country. But we made some really bad decisions follow on that destroyed our relationship with what was left of Iraq that could have prevented a lot of what we may even be seeing today. Well, so from an economic perspective, what are the global markets doing? Are you watching? I know you're watching those kind of things. What are you seeing?
Yeah, we're getting sell-offs. This is because of oil. A spike in the price of oil it creates new inflation worries. It makes the cost of doing business a lot higher. But the markets are very ephemeral. They're going to bounce back very quickly if the war not only wraps up, but even before the war wraps up. If we see solid evidence that the supply of oil is still flowing pretty well, you're going to start seeing the markets come back. It's as simple as that. But you don't want to see spikes in the price of oil. It's one of the most essential commodities, if not the most essential commodity out there besides water and oxygen. So we need those things. But look, it's not going to be easy. But the same people who during the Gulf War were saying things like, well, why did President Bush say go shopping? How come he didn't tell people to stop driving SUVs? Where is the sacrifice? Well, here it is. Gas prices are a little bit higher. Not so much in my neighborhood, but they'll be back over $3 probably in a couple of days, but way down from the $4 and $5 we saw before. If that's all I have to sacrifice for 4 or 5 weeks, it's going to be pretty hard to say there was a terrible hardship incurred on the on the American people.
Well, how about the U.S. stock market? What are those markets doing, and how are these weapons producers doing?
Well, there's a lot of plays. So, the general defense contractors are doing pretty well, but they're doing, small gains. A 1% gain for a major stock is not nothing in one day. But we're seeing something like that. But boy, one of the big stocks to play now. There's been talk for years in Israel about bringing into an IPO IAA, Israel Aerospace Industries, which is really behind a lot of that technology. It's been delayed now 5 years. But there's another stock you can play. It's called Elbit Systems. They make a lot of the software. They do make some equipment. They do make some equipment as well. Elbit Systems has tripled its value just since a year or so ago. It's up something like 20% over the last 5 days. People are seeing a free commercial for this tech right now, and it's clearly working well. But there aren't a lot of major plays here. Listen, I've been telling people to invest in the major defense contractors for 11 years. and if you listened to me, you would have made a lot of money. I told people in 2015, Lockheed Martin, and I know you don't like the price of the F-35, and we don't like all the bureaucratic issues there, but it's the ultimate weapon in the universe. Sorry, it just is. It just is.
It is.
And the Israelis made it even better. And the day I wrote that article, Lockheed Martin shares closed at about 210. They opened at 670 yesterday. Okay, so maybe you should listen to me. So I've been saying that about. Honestly, these companies are worth investing in.
We've ramped weapons production up, contrary to what the naysayers are saying out there. We're not running out of stealthy or highly accurate precision-guided weapons. We're not even having to use them now because we're just using JDAMs, which are a precision bomb. It's a gravity bomb with a kit strapped on it. And we ramped up production of those years and years ago so that we would have adequate supplies when we were hearing commanders like me saying, hey, if you're running out of war reserve supply inventories, you need to rebuild them. And I think the first Trump administration started doing that. And when they came in this time, they ramped up production again. And that production's going very well from what I understand. And I wish I'd bought these stocks when you said it.
Yeah, one thing I'll add real quickly, though, but don't forget, the major force and driver in the U.S. stock markets right now, ever since early last year, has been the AI trade. And there's been a lot of phony reporting about the stock market ever since April. They blamed the stock market drop in April on tariffs. It wasn't that. It was AI. And when the AI fear ended, there was a massive rally back and forth. And AI is dominating really the trade on the street every single day. Yes, the oil price is spiking is the biggest reason today for some of the sell-offs. But this is about AI because Wall Street hasn't figured it out yet. They clearly haven't figured it out. Once they figure things out, they make money on it, whether it's good news or bad news. They haven't figured out quite yet about AI. So just be wary of that. When you hear someone going on TV tonight saying, this war is causing a huge sell-off, it's not true. It's AI that's really the big driver in this market, and it will be for some time.
That's a good point. We've got to take our last break. When we come back, I want to talk about the election outcomes in Texas, North Carolina, Arkansas, and also the economy inside the U.S. and what this situation is telling us. We'll be right back with Jake Novak.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Is the government tracking you? Do they have access to all your data? Well, if you go to worldviewtalk.com, you'll find out about a cell phone company that, does not store your data. They don't do that. This is what they're known for. They don't store your data. You have privacy. You're not being tracked. That's why a lot of folks are turning to worldviewtalk.com. You'll find their prices are very competitive. All the details are there at worldviewtalk.com. Again, worldviewtalk.com. Oh, while you're there, not only do they have cell phones that aren't tracking you, you can find out about how to get a satellite phone. Should the whole system go down and you want to communicate with a family member or a loved one, you might want to have a satellite phone. Or how about their solar generators? They have great solar generators. Check them all out right now. Worldviewtalk.com, worldviewtalk.com.
This morning, the results of the 2026 primaries in Texas, North Carolina, and Arkansas pouring in as the GOP hopes to hold their House and Senate majorities in the midterm elections. Angela Brown at the live desk with the latest for us right now. And so, Angela, now we got this whole setup in Texas, a runoff, for the Senate seat there. North Carolina, meantime, that Senate race taking shape between the former governor and the former RNC chair. There's going to be a lot of money that's going to be spent this year.
I think they even set some records in Texas. I could be wrong when it comes to primary
think you're right. I think you're right. They spent a lot of money.
They did spend a lot of money on both sides. And these
Yes.
races, Jan, could really determine the balance of power in D.C. Both these races, Texas, North Carolina, they could be tight when all is said and done because you have some big name candidates in these races. Let's start in North Carolina, where Republican Michael Whatley and Democrat Roy Cooper won their primary races for Senate. The two will face off in the general election, of course, in November. Whatley brings some firepower. He's bringing President Donald Trump to the table, who supports him, while Cooper is a household name in the Tar Heel state, having served there as governor.
Tonight is not the end of a campaign. Tonight is the beginning of a movement.
I'm running because I love North Carolina, and things just should not be this hard for the people who live here.
And over in Texas, the Republicans will have to wait a little bit longer to see who will advance in the Senate general election. Neither incumbent Senator John Cornyn or AG Ken Paxton, you see right back here, got over 50% of the vote. That means they're going to have to do a runoff. It sets that up. Neither candidate has been endorsed by President Trump, yes, we're watching for that. Wesley Hunt, who was a third candidate in the race, took home some of that vote, too, kind of setting the stage for this runoff. On the Democrat side, it would be State Representative James Tallarico who took home the win. You see him right back here, beating U.S. Representative Jasmine Crockett. Now, Tallarico will now try to do something that has not been done in Texas for decades, flip a Senate seat blue. The last time that happened in Texas, it was back in 1988. So we're talking about a lot of time here. You can find more election results for the races around the country online at thenationaldesk.com.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's Truth Thursday. We're going around the horn talking about world events and domestic events with Jake Novak, my guest today, who's got a great weekend show on WABC Radio. Go check it out. And he's on this show. We've had him on for about once a week here for several weeks. I'm hoping to keep up that level of operation with this guy because he is a sharp analyst and a good friend, and he likes to do what? Tell the truth, because he's a person in the media that works hard and tells the truth, and that's what's important instead of these lying people. Now, I found a good clip there that was pretty good, but they left Proposition 10 out of there, which got 95% of the vote. There were almost 2 million votes cast, I think, on the Republican primary side or something like that. And it got 92% of the vote, and Prop 10 bans Sharia law. So it puts that initiative on the general election ballot. They left that part out. That's another way the mainstream media doesn't tell the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm surprised that the Democrats nationally haven't seized on this more and tried to. I mean, I know they have when they do talk about it, but they haven't tried to talk about it a lot, which is depict this proposition as racist and bigoted, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, it isn't. It's talking about taking over municipal law from a religious standpoint, something that pretty much the rest of the religious world has decided to give up on. Christianity did about 500 years ago. Jews did about 2,000 years ago. The understanding that plurality is possible, that we can live with people. If a governor happens to be a different religion than mine, or mayor, we can do that. And there is that has not yet been accepted in most of the Muslim world yet. It's starting to get accepted in places like Indonesia, where they're talking about it. They don't actually live it, but it's still a radical idea that's not been accepted by Muslims. They don't have leadership telling them, hey, go move to Texas, go live in those places. That's great. Make sure you're living as a good Muslim, but don't try to take over the school board. Don't try to take over when the garbage is taken out. Don't tell people that they bring pork into your community, you're going to throw a stone at them. I mean, you can't do that. There's not enough people in the Muslim community telling them to do that. It's actually the opposite of bigotry. It's basically saying religious bigotry cannot be codified into the law, and that's really what it is.
Yeah. The one meme I shared about it, trying to generate votes, was about save your puppies. Texas, because they hate dogs and they want to ban dogs in places like New York City as pets. Anyway, it's just incompatible with America and the American culture and everything to do with it. Well, we got a question over in the audience. Oh, and we got to give Steve Bannon and Frank Gaffney, the guys at the War Room on RAV, and Frank's organization, bansharia.com. For getting this vote out, man. It's tremendous because it was only just shy of 10% turnout total on the Republican primary side. So let's take this question from Liz in the audience, and I think she's in Texas.
No, I'm not in Texas, I'm in Virginia. But thank you, Colonel. And Jake, good to see you. I'm curious to get your take on with this going all this stuff going on in Iran, how is it affecting other countries like the United States, like Great Britain, and Spain and other countries where a lot of these young Muslim or young Iranian men went when they left their country?
I mean, people like us have been warning Europe for years that this massive migration of Muslim migrants from these countries where they're really literally importing people who hate them and hate their culture would cripple them politically. They'd end up in a situation where they would be worried about rioting, the coverage of rioting. Every time it happens in France, the headline is French youth. Youth. No, it's not youth. It's your Muslim migrants who are setting the cars on fire and doing things like that. And they don't assimilate into the population. They don't become even acculturated. And the whole thing is hopeless. And they become completely, and this is something that, for those of us who've been following the Middle East story for a long time, are quite used to. Because before the migrants, we had the oil. When Israel started to get betrayed by you would think, its political and cultural friends in Europe, it was because of oil. They didn't have a migrant problem back in the 70s or in the 60s when they started to abandon Israel. It was they were worried that the Arab countries, as they did, would jack up the price of oil, embargo the oil, and they would be blamed when the people of Paris and the people of London went to get their cars filled up. So it's the same thing now, except it's not about oil that they're worried about. It's worried about the migrants that they need for votes, or the migrants that they need just to keep the peace, to keep them quiet, that if they overtly support Israel or don't castigate Israel enough, they're going to get riots. And in a place like Spain and a place like England and France, where the non-migrant populations have negative birth rates, this has become an untenable situation, an existential threat. Europe is irrelevant now, and their culture is in a lot of trouble because they're going to destroy. I mean, just like the Taliban destroyed those Hindu, I think it was Hindu or Buddhist very artifacts, they're going to go after the Mona Lisa. They're going to go after these kinds of things. This is really, really serious, and they're going to learn that they waited too long to stand up to this kind of what they imported into their country, which is hostile communities.
That's why you see the Prime Minister of England talking like he's the Premier of Iran instead of the Prime Minister of England. It's unbelievable what's happening, and that's why the ban Sharia efforts focused on Texas. I know New York City's been taken over by Mamdani and his crowd, an Islamist Marxist, but Texas is under bigger threat. They've already have at least two that I know of, Sharia courts at the municipal level that are shadow courts to the judicial system in Northwest Dallas area, and it's got to be stopped, man. Do you think the reason the Democrats haven't seized it has something to do with they know it's a loser issue? I mean, because people do not think Islam belongs in the United States of America. As much as I have Muslim friends and everything that are sane and don't want to bring this stuff in and take over the country, but most people that are adherents to Islam follow their guidance, which is to go to places that we're not, that the infidel inhabits, and take it over. That's why they change churches into mosques everywhere and those kind of things. Do you think from a political perspective, the Dems just recognize it as a loser, even though they're a lot wacky these days than they used to be?
Yeah, I wish that were the answer, because then I think that I can deal with the common sense stuff, but there have been so many issues that the Democrats have decided to support that are also loser issues. The boys and the girls locker rooms. Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, announcing yesterday or the day before that New York's going to go ahead with allowing surgeries and drug treatments for children, minors, for transgender stuff. They've decided to die on a lot of loser hills lately. And so I don't think that if that's the reason that they're not doing this, that I need further explanation. Probably the money's not there. The answer to that is that the money is not there for that, and maybe it will be at some point, but the money probably isn't in there to support a pro-Sharia court type of movement in this country.
Well, I'm going to move to the Senate race in Texas. On the GOP side, there's going to be a runoff between Paxton and Cornyn. Cornyn is hated by the base. He's hated by President Trump's base. But President Trump is making noises like he said he's going to endorse one of them and expects the other one to drop from the race. What do you think that will do if he picks Cornyn? What will be the impact?
We have breaking news. We have breaking news to tell you about just now in the last hour. Ken Paxton, or 2 hours or so, Ken Paxton has, I think, done an incredibly brilliant gambit. He's announced that if John Cornyn will agree to promote and get that Save America Act passed in the Senate, that he will consider, his words, he'll basically drop out of the runoff. Now, this is brilliant because you know what? Cornyn's not going to do it. Cornyn won't take that branch. He won't take that opportunity. He's too enmeshed in his own issues. He hasn't done it already. He's not going to do it now. And this gives Ken Paxton an automatic focus on the best issue for him in this election, that 80-90% of the Republicans want this passed, maybe more than 90%. And he immediately now makes this the central issue. And everywhere he goes, he can say, I was willing to drop out if he would just do this. And he won't do it, America. He won't do it,
brilliant.
Texas. It's a brilliant gambit because I don't think Cornyn's going to do it. I really don't.
He won't do it. He won't do it. I guarantee it. I'd be very shocked if he did. He's a politician. And Paxton, he may be a politician, but he puts America first. And he just did that with that brilliant strategy. Well, Jake, we got to go. I will be in the after space on X. Jake, you're welcome to join us. Next Monday, we'll have L. Todd Wood, CDM Press, talking about Iran, the war, and how we are winning and why. We'll see you then.